My name is Anna Petrak. I'm the Assistant Director of Pre-Med Pre-Health Advising. And we're just going to kind of quickly go around and introduce you to some familiar faces, your assigned pre-health advisors. Emily, if you want to lead us off and just say a little hello.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Emily Hyde. I'm a pre-med advisor here at Northeastern University. I serve students whose last names are E through K, and I'll popcorn it over to Courtney.
Hi, everyone. My name is Courtney Martinez, and I am one of the pre-med advisors as well, and I support students' last name A through D. And I'll popcorn to Tyler.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tyler Rock. My pronouns are he, him, and his. And I'm one of the pre-med advisors who support students with last names N through S.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. So just so that everyone sort of has context of what this meeting is going to be going over, it will be recorded. We will send out an email after today's workshop with that recording. It's also going to be posted on our website where we house all the rest of the 2024 cycle workshops that we've had and that we have yet to come. And the slide deck that we're going through today is going to be an incredible resource for everybody. You will notice as we go through, things are hyperlinked. So it's good to just kind of have on hand as you're completing your applications as questions arise, because likely what we have hyperlinked will lead you to whatever question you might come across. So yeah, lots of resources embedded. We are going to just save questions until the very end. We should cover a lot. So what we go through will probably cover a lot of the questions you might come up with along the way, but definitely, jot down notes of questions that you have that come up as we go, and we'll cover those at the end. Just to go through the agenda, in just a moment, I'm going to pass it over to Emily, and she's going to go over sort of like the general timeline moving forward after today as we enter the application cycle, all through like summer interview season up until basically acceptances, hopefully. We're mainly going to be spending time going over AMCAS, AACOMAS, and TIMSAS, the allopathic and osteopathic application services that you'll be using to submit your applications. And then, like I said, we'll be going over some questions at the end, just so that we're going to be starting out with AMCAS. We're going to probably spend the most time on that one, not only because that's what the majority of our applicants use, but what you're going to notice is as we go through each application service, we're going to come across a lot of very similar information. So it would be repetitive just to kind of go in depth for every single one. But what the goal is to really point out the areas that we get most questions on or that might be most confusing to applicants. Our hope is that after today, you will sort of take ownership of your application and have the confidence and autonomy to complete and submit the application. We, of course, are always going to be a resource for you, as well as the links that we're going to provide throughout today. But hopefully this will kind of give you that confidence to submit. So without further ado, I'm going to just pass it over to Emily.
Excellent. Thanks, Anna. So the first thing we're going to do here is go over the general timeline for medical school applications. The first is AMCAS and TMDSAS have both opened. Those opened on May 2nd. AACOMAS opened just a few days later on May 4th for submission. Our office does recommend spending about 2 to 3 weeks working on your AACOMAS application before you submit. So just be mindful of that. AMCAS and TMDSAS have separate submission dates, so the date you open it and start working on the application will not be the same day that you submit it. Versus AACOMAS, you can open it and submit it on the same day if you wanted, but again, we don't recommend that. May 16th is the first day that you can submit a TMDSAS application, and May 30th is the first day you can submit an AMCAS application. June 30th is the next deadline for most of you to complete the committee letter requirements. That is the deadline that we request that you complete your medical applicant portal. So making sure that all of the check marks on the complete map page are filled in. We want you to submit your primary application and upload a PDF copy of that to your medical applicant portal. Again, it's on that last tab of map where it says complete map. And June 30th is also the deadline to request your committee letter. Once you submit your application to AMCAS or AACOMAS or TMDSAS, your application will not get sent directly to your medical schools. It will first get sent to your application service for verification. Verification is where these application services will go line by line on each of your courses and things that you've done to make sure that everything is accurate and filled in completely. That process can take up to 4 to 8 weeks. So we do recommend, taking your time there. And getting your application in relatively soon, so that the verification process doesn't delay you. June and July is a good time to take a situational judgment test. If applicable, if your schools are requiring the CASPER exam or the AAMC preview exam, June and July is a good time to take it because that's sort of some downtime in the application. You're waiting for your application to be verified. You've already submitted it. That's a good time for the situational judgment tests. Once you've submitted your situational judgment test and you've submitted your primary application, schools will start sending out secondary applications. Really, once your application has been verified and sent over to the med schools, that's when you might start receiving your secondaries. That usually happens around the 4th of July and after, and can lead till about the end of August. We do recommend submitting your secondary applications within 2 weeks of receiving them, and trying to keep that on, keep the ball rolling on your applications there. Interviews will start in around September and last all the way through. I've had students get interviews all the way through April and May, so that's kind of the longest portion of the application year, is just waiting for interviews. And then in the spring, that's when you'll get your decisions as well. So the next slide we'll go over is we'll start talking about the AMCAS application. Again, just reiterating what Anna said, this presentation is designed to address common questions that you might get about the AMCAS application. If you've got more specific questions, you should reach out to AMCAS directly, consult an applicant guide, or reach out to your pre-health advisor. So the first tab on the AMCAS application is when you open it up, the first section you'll be asked to fill out is the identifier. We won't spend a ton of time talking about this. This is really where you just talk about your name, ID numbers, your birthday, that sort of thing. Very basic information. If you do need to update your name at all, that can be done in the AAMC profile itself outside of the application. The next section that you'll fill out will be your school's attendance section. This section may take you a little bit more time. They'll ask you about entering your high school. They'll also ask you to enter your college. It's very, very, very important that you list every post-secondary institution that you've attended for at least one course. Even if you transferred the credits, if you didn't earn any credits, maybe you withdrew from the class, that could be something like a community college, dual enrollment, if there was a accredited certificate program that you were involved in, any higher education institution you need to include in the application. This also includes any NUN locations that you've attended. If you were part of a graduate program or were part of a +1 program, you would create separate entries for each of those programs. So like Northeastern University might be where you put all your undergraduate coursework, and then you might create one that says, Northeastern University Graduate Studies or something of that nature for your graduate level coursework. This is also where you would put post-bac courses, things of that nature. You'll also be asked to request your transcripts. This is a common area where we get a lot of questions for students or from students. So Northeastern University uses Parchment. It's an online service to send transcripts. When you create your schools attended in AMCAS, you'll be asked to then request your transcript. It'll have, hopefully, I think on the website, it might even say like, click here for it. But you'll be brought to Parchment. There's more information on requesting a transcript through Parchment on the registrar's website. It is $8 to send your transcript. You'll send it to AMCAS. You're not going to send these individually to each medical school you're applying to. You're going to send your application or your transcript request in your transcript to AMCAS. When you're in the application, it will give you an option to create what's called a transcript request form. If you do that, you can upload it where it says, would you like to upload an optional attachment at the bottom there? That's where you can upload your transcript request form. You don't have to send that to the registrar. If you have any CPS or +1 coursework, you can select undergraduate and graduate. When you send those transcripts, you can send them individually, but you could also send them undergraduate and graduate here. If you took courses outside of Northeastern, you need to contact that institution's registrar's office to make sure that that's where you're requesting your transcript from. So for example, if you did, dual enrollment credit when you were in high school and you attended a community college for a few classes while you were in high school and you got those credits transferred to Northeastern, you'll need to request a transcript from both Northeastern, but also that community college that you took dual enrollment credits at. Same with NUN. If you were at a non-foreign NUN site, for example, American College of Thessaloniki in Greece, that is not a foreign institution that does require a transcript. You would need to contact the ACT registrar directly to have your ACT transcript sent to Northeastern. Another important section of the schools attended portion of the application is the institutional action square here. Hopefully you've talked about any institutional actions that you've had with your pre-health advisor. If not, I highly recommend that you do so. You will be asked to report both conduct-related and academic-related institutional actions. So if you were ever on academic probation or suspended for a semester, if you have any conduct violations, and you can talk to Oscar about that. If you've ever been written up or had any issues with that. Usually smaller, misdemeanors or smaller things that you may have had a conduct issue with tend to not be the end-all be-all for your application. Those won't necessarily keep you out of medical school, but failure to report an institutional action or failure to complete a form that a school asks you to during an investigation could result in an acceptance being rescinded. So we want you to be honest. We want you to, fully take responsibility for anything that might have happened. Explain what the situation was. How did you grow from it, and ensure, that it won't happen again. And typically it's a non-issue, but again, we don't want you to, not include something, have it come up later, and then have it be a bigger issue. The next section would be about your biographic information, things like your address, your citizenship. Something to keep in mind is your legal residence. This becomes important when you're building your schools list. Many public institutions give preference to people who are from their state, versus, private institutions are pretty accepting of students from anywhere. If you are applying to any public institutions outside of your state, we do recommend that you check the admission statistics of those programs, make sure that they are accepting of, out-of-state applicants. And each state does have a different residency requirement. Some schools require you to be in the state for a year to be an in-state residence. Others, it's 7 years. So make sure you're looking at your individual schools as well before you make a judgment call about, which state you're going to be applying with as your legal residence. Another important section of the biographic information is this other impactful experiences section. If you've ever applied in the past, this sometimes is referred to as the disadvantaged question. But the other impactful experiences section has been expanded this year. This is a relatively newer part of the application. This is for applicants who have had an impactful life experience, or have faced or overcome a challenge such as things with their family, maybe a tricky financial situation in their community, education, religion, or some other life experience that was really impactful for you. The experiences can be from any point in your life. They don't need to be related to medicine or healthcare. The purpose of this question is to help medical schools get a fuller view or an understanding of who you are as an applicant. Medical schools do a very holistic review of applicants. And so this is their way of just getting to know you a little bit on a deeper level. You don't have to put anything in this box if you don't feel that you have anything, to add. This is an optional question, but yeah. Okay, so the next portion is the coursework section. This will take you the longest of your entire application to fill out. This is where you'll probably spend the bulk of your time. You do need to input every single course at any higher education institution that you've ever attended, whether like we said before, even if you've, withdrawn or repeated, it still needs to be included here. And this can take a significant amount of time to fill out. We recommend filling this out with an official transcript. You do want to report everything on your application exactly how it appears on your official transcript. So having an official transcript for yourself can be good. If you're not able to access one, an unofficial transcript would also be fine, but we would prefer you to use an official transcript. You'll be asked to enter the year and the term that you took the course. You'll be asked to input the course name and number exactly how it appears on your transcript. I cannot stress that enough. If there's a space here, put a space on your application. If it says a specific word, put that on your application. You'll also be asked to classify the course. This can sometimes cause some confusion for people. You want to classify the course in the subject that you feel best describes the class itself. So for example, if you took a biopsych course, Northeastern codes that as a psychology class. If you feel that the bulk of what you learned in that course and the bulk of the assessment of the class was biology based, you can code it as a biology course. And during the verification process, AMCAS would make that final determination of whether or not they believe that to be correct. Usually, as long as you use your best judgment, it's fine. As long as you're not listing basket weaving as a biology class, I think you'll be in the clear. But you can look at the course classification guide, which we've linked here for additional questions about if you're not sure where to put a class, things like that. Biochem is a pretty common one. Most medical schools code that as chemistry, not as biology, even though at Northeastern it's in the biology department. You'll also be asked to put the credit hours, so how many credits was the course, what grade did you earn, and you'll be asked if it was a lecture, a lab, or combined. Most lectures and labs are separated at Northeastern. Bio project lab is a combined lecture and lab. That sometimes trips people up. And you'll also be asked to see if there's any special course types. Was it honors? Was it a repeat? Was it a study abroad course? You'll be able to enter that. If you've got questions on your coursework, you can certainly contact AMCAS directly because, again, they have final say on how things are verified. So if you do have questions about coursework, it's best to reach out to them. They also have some very helpful videos within the application itself that can help, answer some of these questions as well. All right, foreign coursework sometimes causes a lot of confusion for students. If you have ever studied abroad for a semester, if you've ever participated in NUN at a foreign institution, that would be like UCD, Swinburne, some other foreign institutions, you will need to pay very close attention to the AMCAS foreign coursework guide that is linked here. I think AMCAS has done a really, really good job in the last couple of years about expanding their guidance regarding study abroad and foreign coursework. So I do recommend going through that pretty closely. It basically boils down to you must enter your courses attempted through a study abroad program if awarded by a U.S. institution. So that would be most of your NUN or study abroad courses. You're going to list study abroad courses under the foreign college, the foreign listing of your institution or the organization at which the coursework was attempted, exactly as it appears on your sponsoring U.S. or Canadian institution's transcript. So you're going to enter the courses that you took under the foreign college exactly as it appears on your U.S. sponsoring. So for most of you, that's going to be your Northeastern transcript. Don't enter your coursework twice. Don't list it as oh, I took it at ACT and I listed it under Northeastern. Don't list it twice. Note that not every single NUN site out of the United States is a foreign institution. We sort of talked about earlier, American College of Thessaloniki. That's a U.S. institution that is physically located in Greece. That is not a foreign institution. That does not get entered here. It gets entered as its own school, its own transcript, its own classes. Another important thing to note, Dialogues of Civilization, I know a lot of you have gone on them. That is not considered foreign coursework, okay? That is a course that you took with a Northeastern University professor. You got a Northeastern grade for it. It just happened to be that you were taking the course abroad. That was, in the nature of the class. So do not list whatever school you were physically sitting in abroad. They have no transcript for you because the classes you took were through Northeastern. So do not list those as foreign coursework. Do not list that as a foreign institution. You would list those courses that you've taken as part of your dialogue within Northeastern University. And I think I'm going to turn it over now to Tyler to go over the work and activities section.
Thank you so much, Emily. Lots of important information. While Emily said that the coursework section is going to be a pretty bulky area, you're going to be taking up a lot of time. I would say work and activities is right there with it, another very bulky section. So this is the section of the application where you're going to be inputting the up to 15 experiences that you've been doing for the past couple of years that we've had the opportunity to hear about. That you now want to share with medical schools to show that you are a unique applicant to their program. So starting with the experience type, there's many different ways you can categorize your experiences. There could be paid clinical, volunteer clinical, research. There's actually a new experience type this year, social justice and advocacy. What we recommend is to do the best to categorize your experiences here. Our office and medical schools both recognize that some experiences can overlap in terms of categorization. We recommend doing the best that you can to categorize them. You know your experiences best. Like Emily said earlier, as long as you're not categorizing it as something so far out of left field, most medical schools will understand where you were going with it. You want to be honest. You want to best categorize it to your knowledge of the experience. You're going to, of course, name what the experience was, put the start and end date for it, the hours that you've accumulated for the experience. There's also an anticipated hours function as well for anything that you're planning on doing throughout the cycle. Or if you started something a little bit earlier that you're continuing through the cycle, you can acknowledge that it will be ongoing and share the anticipated hours as well. But please note that any planned activities, anticipated hours doesn't hold usually as much weight in the application process, but it's good to note it's something potentially that can go into a update letter if that's something that you would need to do at some points throughout the cycle, or secondary applications or interviews. So that would be the starting point of work and activities. Continuing on with it, you are going to put in the organization's name of where you were working, the contact information for the person that medical schools may need to contact if they need to for whatever reason. They may not. If you don't have the information for a contact person for whatever experience you're listing, you can also list the name of the person who can verify your participation, and that could even be yourself for certain experiences as well. You could see AMCAS on the AMCAS guide on page 53 for a little bit of more information on how to fill out that part. Now, the description section of the experience. This is the bulky part that you've gotten to talk with your pre-health advisor in your application readiness meeting a lot about. So for each experience, you have 700 characters to talk about, which we understand is not a lot to talk about. Medical schools want you to condense your thoughts into a very small amount. We recommend using the competency-based language. In your application readiness meetings, I am sure you had the opportunity to talk about these competencies with your advisor. You have a copy of the definitions of them in your application guide that we have sent. I recommend to students have those definitions next to you when you are filling out your application, so you can pull out those competencies when you can. You want to think outcome-based when you are writing about your experiences. Out of your 15 experiences, you'll have the opportunity to identify 3 of them as your most meaningful. By designating it as your most meaningful, you will then have an additional 1,325 characters to explain why that experience was more meaningful to you. So it gives you actually a little bit more characters to talk about things. So definitely strategize which of the 3 that you would like to designate as most meaningful. Letters of evaluation. So this is where you're going to input, if you are receiving a committee letter or a letter packet from our office, you are putting our information into this slot. So that would include our name, 360 Huntington Avenue, Boston, that phone number, and then our email, which you can check on the website for your respective advisor's email address. please note this is a pretty common question that we get. All the letters that we've requested from you are included in your committee letter. So those 3 faculty, the 1 clinical, the up to 2 optional, those all are going to be in your committee letter or letter packet. You do not need to list them all separately. They all fall under our name, so you can leave it that way. However, if you are planning to utilize a letter writer outside of our committee letter, you can list that person as well outside of our entry. But please be aware of any letter limits that schools may have. That is something that you will want to check prior to doing that. You will submit your application before AMCAS has received your letters of evaluation. This is really, really important. We are uploading committee letters and letter packets throughout the summer. So you can submit your application without us uploading it. That is very much okay. We are usually uploading committee letters and letter packets throughout the summer during secondary application time, which is a very, very common time for advisors to be uploading committee letters and letter packets. Your letters will be added to the application as they're received by AMCAS. It should not cause a delay to the application processing time. Schools will receive these updates automatically as letters are received. This is not something our office has seen as an issue as we've uploaded them in the past throughout the summer. I know that's sometimes a little bit of a scary point for students, but you could always reach out to your pre-health advisor. If a school were to ever give you a difficult time with that, we can always work with that, but it's not something that we anticipate happening. Medical schools. So this is where you are entering in the medical schools that you are hoping to apply to. It should be actually one of the first screens that pop up when you are first opening the application. It lets you select medical schools you're interested in. Of course, you're able to change that at any point through the application process. Our office recommends applying to about 15 to 20 medical schools cumulatively. So if you're planning to apply to MD and DO, we're talking cumulatively about 15 to 20. Obviously, if it's just MD, then just 15 to 20 about for just MD programs. We did host a Building Your Schools workshop earlier this semester. Please take a look at that. We strongly recommend using a program called MSAR. There is a subscription fee. I believe 1 year is about $28 subscription, and 2 years, I believe, is about $36. This really gives you a lot of statistics and data for build a strategic schools list that's best fitting for who you are as an applicant, so you have the best chances when applying to medical schools. Personal statement. So here is where you are able to enter in your personal statement. It has to be 5,300 characters for AMCAS. If you are planning to copy and paste it from a Word document, please make sure that it looks exactly how it did in the Word document. There's no typos. If it happens to be over 5,300, make sure that it didn't get cut off anywhere. Read through it once it's in that little box. It's so important. No spelling mistakes, grammar mistakes. We want to make sure that that is looking really good. Just like your descriptions for each experience, you want to try and avoid any type of grammar, spelling. Reread it, have someone else potentially read it over just to make sure that it is all good to go. If you have not already done so, you can consider sending a draft of your personal statement to your pre-med advisor, as well as the Writing Center, who I believe does work with alumni as well, if you are an alumni. We can provide any type of content, review, feedback, suggestions. We might not catch every syntax, grammar, spelling. The Writing Center, that might be a better fit for them if they catch anything with personal statements there. But here's where you will enter that in. And then finally, one of the last parts is where your standardized entrance exam specifically, your MCAT scores will automatically populate once the score has been published. please note that for students that have not received their MCAT score, by the time that they're applying, you will enter in the date that you have taken it. So that might mean May, whatever. An option that you would have that our office would recommend considering is if you don't have your MCAT score by the time that you would be applying to, we still recommend trying to be an early applicant, submitting it within that first week you are able to. So that's that last week of May, first week of June. You are not able to submit it without one school on there. So we recommend putting one school on there, ideally not a dream school, and still submitting the application. So we can get you into that verification process, which takes about 4 to 6, 8 weeks, where AMCAS is going through transcripts, making sure everything behind the scenes looks okay with the application. You'll receive your MCAT score back towards the end of that verification process at some point in June. At that point, if you are happy with your MCAT score and ready to move forward with the process, you can add the rest of your schools into the application. It's one of the very few things that you are able to edit in the application. It does not delay your verification process or alter that whatsoever. If you are unhappy with your MCAT score and would not like to move forward with the cycle any further, you can withdraw your application from that point, and only one school would see that instead of your entire schools list. Again, this is for students that will not have their MCAT score by the time that they are applying. Another exam score that will appear on this is preview. Usually a lot of our students end up taking Casper previews, situational judgment exams in June, July during secondary application time. So that would probably come in potentially a little bit later. But of course, if any medical schools need it earlier, their policies take precedence. That sums up the AMCAS application. So a lot of information. I'm going to pass it off to Anna to talk about AACOMAS.
Thank you, Tyler. So AACOMAS is the central application service for osteopathic medical schools. When you first go in and create your account, you will be prompted to choose the schools at which you plan to apply. But don't get too hung up on that because you can always add schools on. So don't let that sort of like slow you down in the process. Once the application gets going, you're going to see a dashboard that looks like this. Basically, the application is organized into 4 sections, very much like the AMCAS application. So like I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, we'll kind of like whiz through some of this stuff because it's very similar to what you're going to encounter in AMCAS. So there's a lot of overlap there. But if we we can see like personal information, academic history, supporting information, and program materials. So we're going to start with personal information. You'll notice the left-hand side of your screen kind of lays out the different like subsections of personal information. So things like signing off on the release statement, your biographic information, contact information. We're not going to go through that stuff. I'm confident you guys can fill that out. But I do want to pause quickly at the citizenship information, specifically the residency information. As Emily mentioned when we were talking about AMCAS, slightly different for DO schools. DO schools don't necessarily show like preference for an in-state school, out-of-state, public, that sort of thing. So typically your state of residence won't really matter too much when it comes to building your school list. So that's just like a slight difference when you're filling this portion out of the application. But of course, you're going to want to put like your true state of residence. Personal information continued. We're just going to spend some time on this bottom tab of other information, the things that you want to pay attention to here. The application is going to ask about academic infractions or conduct violations. Just as Emily said, really important to just be upfront and disclose this information. Even if it's been expunged or you're not totally sure, you can always reach out to the relevant your home college or Oscar to see if you do have any things that maybe you don't recall. But essentially, just as Emily said, you kind of want to just be upfront, explain the situation, take responsibility, share what you've learned from the situation, and basically move forward. The next part of the same section of the application under personal information and other information, are two other common questions that you're going to see regardless of application service: impacts of COVID-19. Basically, this has been a question for the last couple of years, so you can definitely share what you probably have in common with your peers who are applying. You likely all had sort of disruptions to your academic, professional, and personal lives, so definitely share that information there. But another thing that you may want to reflect on is sort of how the pandemic has shaped your view of medicine or public health. So those are other areas that you could sort of make that portion a little bit unique. And then the other really important thing for you to note here is this is where you will be inputting or requesting your MCAT scores be sent. So basically you will have to request that your scores be released from AMCAS to AACOMAS. So you will request that through AMCAS for all of your MCAT scores. So every attempt you've had, every time you've taken it, to be released and sent to AACOMAS for the cycle. Once you've been assigned your AAMC ID number, you will enter that information into the space provided in this portion of the AACOMAS application. That will help the application, those who are processing it, like link you to that score. So it's helpful to put that there. The AAMC will process these requests in batches and then will post to your application. Be patient here. It's probably not going to be something that happens overnight, but you can check the status in your application. There's like a check status tab in the standardized test section. So once that's posted, that's where it will be housed. Next part we want to touch on is the academic history. Again, here you will see that they're going to ask for your high schools attended, colleges attended, just as Emily said. But in terms of transcript entry, it will take you some time, but pretty straightforward. Just like Emily said, you want to enter them exactly as they appear on your transcript. You want to report all courses on your transcripts. So be sure to include courses that even if you withdrew from them, if you repeated them, if it was an ungraded lab, test credits, co-ops, everything like that will go here. Again, really helpful to use the official copy of your transcript as reference as you fill out this section. You want to make sure that the department prefixes, course numbers, and everything like that match exactly as they appear on your transcript. And so one thing to note is definitely entering the courses under the institution where you originally took the course. So even if you took, let's say, a summer class outside of Northeastern and you transferred into Northeastern, even though it now appears on your Northeastern transcript, you still have to request a transcript from the original home institution and input that course under the college you initially took it at. The AACOMAS applicant guide has ton of information to help you with this. Once you are done entering your coursework, you will review and finalize your transcript. And so that's sort of when you're going to categorize them if it was like a study abroad class, an AP class, or a repeated class. And then just to touch on the AACOMAS foreign coursework. So if you participated in a study abroad program or something like NUN at a foreign university, such as UCD or Swinburne, you want to make sure that you carefully review the AACOMAS study abroad or overseas U.S. transcript section for their applicant help. Essentially, if your full credits and or grades for study abroad courses do not appear on your undergraduate transcript, you should report that you attended a foreign institution. You do not need to list your courses under foreign schools, as AACOMAS does not allow foreign coursework to be recorded. So do not send any documentation unless an evaluation is required by a program that you're applying to, in which case you would need to check your individual schools that you're applying to see if that's something that they require. Important things to note here that not every single NUN site outside of the US is a foreign institution. Same example that Emily provided, ACT is an American institution that's abroad. So if you're not sure, if you did like an NUN and you're like, I don't know, is this a foreign institution? Feel free to reach out to your pre-health advisor and we can help you figure that out. Another thing to note is that your dialogues of civilization, this is not considered foreign coursework, so you're going to list those courses just as you would as any other Northeastern course under Northeastern. And now I'm going to hand it off to Courtney.
Awesome. Thanks, Anna. So let's continue with AACOMAS under the supporting information part of the dashboard. Under supporting information, that's where you will enter information about your evaluations. These are your letters of recommendation, as well as your experiences, achievements, and personal statement. For the letters of evaluation, if you're receiving a committee letter or a letters packet from Northeastern, from our office, you will put in your advisor contact information and Northeastern address and phone number for the evaluator's information. That will give us a link so that we can upload your letters packet or committee letter to your application. If you're applying with individual letters, then you'll put in your individual letter writer's contact information here. But again, if like Tyler mentioned earlier, if you're using a committee letter or a letters packet, you only would put your advisor's information and not list individual letter writers. For the committee letter and letters packet process, we recommend that you put a due date of July 31st in the request for our office. We will turn those around in a timely manner based on the order that we receive your requests. But if you could put July 31st as the due date, that would be great. And as a reminder here, you will have to submit your primary application in order to proceed with the committee letter or letters packet process. So definitely don't delay your submission if you're waiting on letters, especially the committee letter or the letters packet. And then if you're doing individual letters, same thing there. Make sure you submit your primary. Your individual letter writers can always submit at a later time. For the experience section, this is where you will put in each of your experiences that you have done to prepare as a pre-medical student. Unlike AMCAS, in AACOMAS, you have an unlimited number of experience boxes. So we recommend that you include as many as you feel like are necessary to show a holistic perspective of the things that you've done since you've been a full-time college student. For some of you, you might have had an experience where you started off full-time, maybe a co-op, and then you moved to a part-time role or a per diem role later. In that case, we would recommend creating 2 separate experience boxes, one for the time that you were in a full-time capacity, and then a second when you transitioned to a different schedule. That way you can talk about some of the differences and highlight your 2 different work schedules and amount of hours during those 2 times. For achievement and personal statement. So under achievement, this is where you can highlight things different from an experience where maybe you received an award or you won an honor. Maybe you did a conference presentation for your research or with your co-op, or if you have a research publication, or if you have a scholarship, we recommend that you would include all of those things as achievements. And then your personal statement, very similar to AMCAS, 5,300 characters. We do recommend using a Word document, having it edited, using Grammarly, different sources ahead of time, and then copying and pasting it into AACOMAS. And like Tyler mentioned earlier, make sure that you look at the formatting in your personal statement in AACOMAS specifically to be sure that things weren't cut off and that your paragraphs are appearing the way you want them to. Things like italices may stay, but you just want to make sure that the formatting is correct. And then for program material, so this is the last section on your dashboard, and this is where you will be asked to specifically designate any prereqs or any additional information that's school specific. So you'll only have access to designate prereqs for schools that you've added to your application. So maybe when you first start out with the application to get going, if you only have 1 or 2 programs, when you get to program materials, you'll only be able to designate prereqs for those 2 schools. So if you add more schools later, make sure you revisit the program materials section so that you can designate your prereqs and make sure if there's any additional questions that they include that you have those answered as well. And that's everything for AACOMAS. We'll briefly touch on TMDSAS. This is the application for Texas medical schools and dental schools. In MSAR, you can review the MD programs in Texas, but you won't be able to apply to those programs through AMCAS. A lot of them use TMDSAS. So here we really just kind of give a brief overview. TMDSAS has actually done a really good job of walking through all the nitty-gritty of their application. So instead of reinventing the wheel, we want to direct you to the workshop that they've completed if you want to get more specifics on what their application looks like. And similar to lots of public schools, Texas schools are very in-state friendly as well. So if you are from Texas, we highly encourage you to consider applying to Texas schools. If you're not from Texas or don't have in-state residency, make sure you look at the admission statistics for the schools you're applying to see if it's really going to be a school that's going to be worth your application. And as you go through this process of applying, we know there's a lot of questions. There could be specific circumstances where you're not 100% sure on, or you want to get clarification. We first recommend that you review the applicant guides for the applications you're applying to. AMCAS, AACOMAS, and TNDSAS both have very detailed applicant guides where you can probably find the answer to 99% of your questions. If you're not sure from there, we recommend following up directly with the application service itself or your academic advisor. I will say that we do our best to really support you with the content of what you're applying with, but some of the details of the policies and the processes, the application services themselves will really be the best people to answer some of those questions. So in this slide, and we'll send it out to you, like we mentioned throughout the presentation, we really designed this to be a resource to you. So reference this slide where you can get a quick link to the applicant guides, phone numbers, or email addresses for the different application services. And if you do need more help, we are 100% here and available to you. This is just a quick review of all the advisors in our office. You can reach out to us via email, set up an advising appointment, etc. One of our biggest priorities this summer is working on writing committee letters and processing letters packets. So that's going to be what's taking the majority of our time to support you through your letters of evaluation services. But we are here to support as you have additional questions. We also want to highlight just quickly before we jump into questions, some of the additional workshops that are coming up. Tufts, we have a biomedical sciences program visit coming up soon, secondary application workshop in June, and an interview workshop to help you get prepped for those in August. So lots more coming your way. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm going to stop the recording before we jump into questions.